Thank you for taking the time to look at to view my vBrownBag session that I'm going to record. It's how to use vRealize operations as you're monitoring single pane of glass. I work for Select Medical, and we're located in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. I am a vExpert for 2020, and if you look at my slide deck there, I do have my Twitter handle and also the address to my blog if you would want to reach out to me after you view this. A little bit of my background. I've been using the ESXi for quite a few years, vRealize operations, for over 6 years. Create a lot of custom dashboards, reports, alerting. Been using the True Visibility Suite. I also do a lot with vRealize automation, so I'm going to show some demos, that whole single pane of glass, how you can integrate the two together. And just real quick with the V community, I've been involved since like 2013. Started by just going to some local V mugs, and then I thought I wanted to give back a little bit. So I've done some presentations at some HVC events. I've done a power block and also talked at some Little Hacks. And if you haven't gone to a Little Hack, those are really good. You should try to get involved locally if you can. So to use vRops as your single pane of glass, there's a lot of really good built-in stuff right out of the box. Some really good dashboards, alerting, and reports. And then once you become more familiar with it, start creating your own dashboards and your alerts and start looking at super metrics. And then you can use it for troubleshooting, right sizing. If app teams ever come to you and say, I need more CPU and memory, there's some really great dashboards to get the proper size of your VMs, or to even show costs to your managers. If somebody says, hey, I want to move this to the cloud, there's some really good dashboards on showing the costs on-prem versus the cloud. So that's, I keep saying that single pane of glass. I mean, there's so many uses with vRops. And then to start extending vRops, instead of just using everything that's built right out of the box, they have what they call management packs. So if you go out to marketplace.vmware.com, there's some that you can get, and that'll start expanding the capabilities of vRops. Some examples are some of the storage companies like HP or EMC have some management packs. So not only can you monitor your hosts and your VMs, but now you can start getting a lot deeper into your SAN environment. So that's, that single pane of glass. And what really made me think about the topic of my presentation is when I started looking at the text display widget. You can with that widget, you can link to internal URLs, external URLs, website widgets. You could show weather maps if you have a lot of SaaS applications. A lot of them have like a status website of how well they're doing, and you can link to that. And what you can't do with it is you can't alert off of any of that data. It's really display only. But my use case was to create vRops to be that single pane of glass for our environment, and just to show data from many different sources. Here's some examples. I said I do a lot with VRA also, which is vRealize automation, is I create some websites that I link to with vRops that show our server builds, or if we're going to decom a server, or we let app teams do snapshots. So I have these dashboards that let us see what other teams are doing. So, it's that one place to go for monitoring, and you can use it for more than just the data that is collected out of vCenter. So here you can see like our server builds, I show the server name, the IP, all that information right in that dashboard. And the way I do my automation is most of it is with PowerShell. So like for doing server builds, when it's done, I create a static web page that I put out on a web server, because I store the data into a SQL database, and then I create this website. And it doesn't matter what the web server is. If you're a Windows web shop and you want to use IIS, or if you want to use any other kind of web server, it doesn't matter. And I kind of got the idea because if you go to my blog site, I've been using Hugo, which I've been pretty happy with. And what I do is I take all those pages I create with Hugo and I save it to my GitHub repository, and I use GitHub Pages to display that. And that, when I started using that, it's like, that'd be a great way to do VROPs. So that's what I do. And what management does in our environment then is they're always going to vRops as that single pane of glass to see what we're doing with automation. So it's that nice little integration. Then with vRops 8 and VRA 8, they did a really good job right out of the box that you can integrate the two together. So if you do a deployment, and let's say you give users access to only VRA and not vRops, you can still integrate those. And if you look in there in my slide deck, you can see I'm showing the performance of the VM. So there again, it's always going back to that one single pane of glass that you can pull in all the information. And thinking outside the box a little bit with the text display widget, we have two different data centers. And one of the things I thought would be kind of nice to show is the weather from each. One is in Pennsylvania, one's in Texas. And then like for Pennsylvania, I even show the radar map. And that's all within vRops, that you don't have to leave vRops if you're in there monitoring your performance all day long. And I just thought that was a great way to show that, because if you display this on, let's say you have a NOC center and you have a whole wall of TVs and you want to be able to show the people inside your NOC, hey, this is what the weather is like outside, because most NOCs that I've been in don't have windows, and it's kind of thinking outside the box a little bit of what you can display. Ever since everybody's on my team has been working from home, we're really big users of Zoom. So we use that for video chats and chats. So Zoom has a status website. So there again, I use the text display widget to link out to Zoom, and it shows the status. Just this past Monday, Zoom was having some issues with some people weren't able to join some video conferences. So some of my team went to this dashboard that I have, and they immediately seen that, hey, there's some alerts that Zoom's saying there's issues. So, it's always that single pane of glass. I keep saying it, but try to think of that's where you go to do monitoring and check performance. I'm even showing an example there of AWS. There's a lot of SaaS applications that people have, and as long as they have a status page available, you could look at showing that. And there again, you could even show that in your NOC. Everybody's working from home. One of the things I didn't always know was when were the people actually working on my team, if they were taking a day off. So our developers internally created a web page that shows information from Kronos. So they sent everybody the link, and I'm like, man, that would be a great thing to include in the vRops, since we're in there all day long monitoring performance, is to create this link. So you can see there, I can go out at any time and see who's working and which days. When I talked about right sizing, in addition to monitoring, if an app team says, hey, I need this much CPU or this much memory, after you're monitoring your VMs for a while, it tells you what they should be, So if they're asking for a lot, you can say no, or maybe it's even the opposite. Maybe they don't have enough CPU and memory, and that's why they're complaining that it's slow. So there again, to use that single pane of glass, now you're also using it to set up things correctly in your environment. One of the new features in version 8 of vRops that I really like is the troubleshooting workbench. So, you're monitoring, you're kind of seeing how things are, but then to go out here and do your troubleshooting. Here you can see all the different layers in your stack, and I really like how they do the red, yellow, green. If VM is having issues, go and look at this right away and see where your issue. If you see red, that's where maybe you should start looking at first. If things are showing green, don't spend time in that area. So there's also many ways to show this information to your users. You can set them up as a user that they would sign into vRealize operations directly. And in a NOC environment, if they sign in as a specific user, what you can do is give a list of which dashboards that you would want to display, have them auto-rotate, and what's going to display next, and set a time on there. If you have Workspace 1 in your environment, you can create catalog items that are linking to dashboards. And if you just want to send somebody a quick link by email, you could do that. And if you look at my slide deck, when you create these links for people to see outside of vRealize, you can even set a time, and you can say it's good for 1 day, a week, a month, or never expire if you're doing it on like a company portal or something. So I'm also showing that let's say there's one dashboard that you created that you have this corporate portal that's already in place, and you're like, man, I'd really like to show that data. You can take the embedded information, and that's what I'm showing, and include that into other systems. I mean, everything I'm talking about is bringing data into vRealize, but you can do the opposite too if you really have to. Here's what it looks like in Workspace 1. You can see like where I work, we give a lot of links to all the VMware products, even some products that aren't VMware. And then this makes a nice little area that everybody comes to that you don't want to set them up as a user, but you still want them to see the dashboards. You can do that with Workspace 1. And then what you can do is set up what they call categories. And I have a category that's called dashboards. So I take all my vRealize dashboards so to quickly see which ones are dashboards, groups them all together nice. And this would be like if you're in a NOC environment, or even working from home sometimes, I have an extra monitor that I'll sign in and actually have like a NOC type environment in my house that you can say, display this dashboard, and then, do the auto transition, turn that on, say, keep it on the screen for 180 seconds, 3 minutes, and here's what to display next, and just have these screens. So if you're on a NOC and you have a whole wall of screens, you can kind of set up some really nice, if you don't have enough screens to show all your dashboards, just set up some rotation and set a timing on it. Works really great in a NOC. So a quick overview. Just think of vRealize as a place for that single pane of glass that you can display more than what it's collecting from vCenter. The text display widget, just think outside of the box. I really think they should rename that to the cool shit widget, because if you can display weather and websites that you create internally, it's really good widget. And then all the different ways that you can display the dashboards to users. It's whatever works best in your environment. So, I should go out and start creating your own single pane of glass. If you want to see what I'm working on next, just follow me on Twitter @DaleHassinger, or go out and check out my blog site. It's vcrocs.info. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and reach out to me afterwards if you have any additional questions. Thanks.